Hello and welcome to this morning's episode of Trending. Today's show is brought to you by Red Life Therapy. For healing at a cellular level, head over to redlifedevices.com and use the code Ickonic for 10% off. There's a free webinar explaining all about how the technology works. That's today, and I'll put the link to that in the description below. Now, I'm going to be joined by Richard Willett very shortly, but I just wanted to comment on something really briefly, because yesterday, if you watched yesterday's episode of Trending, me and Jay were talking about the fact that plane crashes, plane issues basically with Boeing and stuff like that have been in the news constantly at the moment. And we sort of asked the question, like, is this intentional? Because we know they don't want us flying. So are they trying to create a situation where maybe we're a little bit too frightened to fly? Well, overnight, there's been another plane crash, this time in Washington. An aeroplane with about 63 people on board has crashed with a military helicopter. No survivors, it seems. It is quite strange in the sense that the aircraft, they crashed very near the Pentagon. It's in an airspace that's massively protected. It seems strange that it would be allowed to have two aircrafts that close together in that particular airspace. They've also said that it was a clear night and they had a direct line of sight. So it's very, very strange. So again, I just wanted to kind of comment on that because it's another plane crash, which seems quite odd. And I guess, we don't know the facts yet in terms of what's happened, or a passenger list, which often can be significant. But I just thought I'd mention that. Anyway, Rich, I'll throw to you then, mate. You've got today's first story. I should say hello to you first. How are you, mate?
I'm all right, thank you. Yeah, a passenger list like the Titanic, and there was a few passengers on that one that had to go down. My first story today is a US tech stocks partly recover after Trump says deep seek AI chatbot is a wake-up call. Now, it's not so much about Trump, this is more about be scared, China, AI. We need to have better AI quickly because the Chinese have basically, beat us to the punch. Tentative rise comes after emergence of cheaper Chinese rival wiped $1 trillion off the value of leading US tech companies. So this is called DeepSeek. This is an AI bot. And this is after, obviously, Trump came out with his 500 million Larry Ellison project. And so they've basically been beaten by something that's a fraction of the cost. So what they're doing here, though, for me, is basically saying, China are well ahead of us. Be scared. China are basically going to take us over if we don't roll out ours just as quick and catch up to them. So this is quite clear that what didn't just come about overnight. This company, it's not another one from the garage. I wouldn't have thought. I would probably be sold as that way. But DeepSeek came out of nowhere. It cost a fraction of the costs, and now it's basically saying that China are well ahead of the US and the world with this chat GPT type stuff. So the emergence of DeepSeek, which has built its R1 model chatbot at a fraction of the cost of competitors such as OpenAI's Chat GPT and Google's Gemini, wiped $1 trillion, so $800 billion and pounds even, in value from the leading US tech index on Monday. There's no way this just comes out of nowhere, is it? So this is quite clearly a setup. Not as if they didn't know this company was out there doing this. And Frank in his garage just came up with it and went, oh, I've done a cheaper one. So Sam Altman and that are panicking about it. Basically, their whole conclusion to come to is that we need to speed up with our tech to catch up, which is obviously it hits two things on the head. Chinese are scary and bad, and they've got scary bad AI, and we need to catch up with our AI and roll out our infrastructure quick. So It's quite clear to me.
Well, it manufactures consent. I looked at that, Rich, and I got the same thing from it, that actually there is a bit of pushback on the AI stuff from within the United States because, Musk has said AI could be the end of humanity. That's and it's true. So obviously Trump's pushing it. The UK are pushing it massively. There is a bit of pushback, but by kind of saying that China are beating us to it, it's like, so we've got to do it to keep up with them. You appeal to that tribal nature within Americans, particularly, of America needs to be number one. And I thought about it in my head. If you're trying to get people out there that have got kids, obviously Rich and myself have got young children. If you're trying to get your kids to get dressed and you say, come on, get dressed, and you have this fight that goes back and forth, as soon as you say, I'm going to beat you, race, I'm going to get dressed before you, your kid will be getting those clothes on as quick as they possibly can. And to me, it seemed like the same thing. It's kind of a way of saying to Americans that are kind of apprehensive, quick, I'll race you, I'll beat you to it, so that they will get behind it. That was my take on it.
Yeah, and there was a Blue Peter moment. There was here's one I've made earlier. And where did this come from? It's ridiculous, really. So, but yeah, that was an interesting one.
Well, my story, Rich, is again, it's America related, it's Trump related. We're not going to go crazy Trump heavy on this one, but this one couldn't not be mentioned. So yesterday, Trump has signed an executive order, a swish of a pen. He's been doing a lot lately, basically saying this is a bill that will combat anti-Semitism. And obviously, there's a lot of support for that. We don't want anti-Semitism and all that kind of stuff, but it's always about the small print. Trump is massively owned by Israel. Anyone that can't see that, I don't really know what to say to you, because actually, to be fair to Donald Trump, he's actually not lied about that. He's actually not hidden that. So I think that's something that's quite out in the open. This headline comes from the Times of Israel. Trump order calls to revoke visas of foreign students who protest against Israel. So where's the anti-Semitism there? Unless you're saying that protesting against a foreign government that is killing children, tens of thousands of children, unless you're claiming that's anti-Semitic, which of course they are claiming that. Now, my question, I guess, is for the Trump supporters in this is a guy that got elected on a basis of free speech. I mean, if I had £1 every time he said First Amendment rights throughout his campaign trail, I'd have a few quid. Now, this is against the First Amendment. There seems to be quite a lot of silence about that within Trump supporters. The First Amendment protects everyone in the United States, including foreign citizens studying at American universities. So Mr. Free Speech, with a swish of a pen, has thrown out the First Amendment that he used as a crutch throughout his campaign to get elected. It is absolutely insane. We spoke before, Rich, about the fact that, and more me actually, I lost on this one because I thought actually he'd come out and do some really good things really quickly, and actually then people would turn around to us and say, "See, I told you he was genuine. Can't believe you doubted him for a minute." But actually, he hasn't done that. He's come out pushing mRNA vaccines again, pushing AI, as we've spoken about, and now just with a swish of a pen, just kicking the First Amendment clean in the face. He seems like a different Trump this time, Rich, to me. Just even when I look at his eyes, his whole demeanor, everything about him doesn't feel like the same guy. I had a conversation with my dad this morning about it, actually, and he said the same thing to me, like that he's a different guy this time than he was in 2016.
Absolutely. Even put a picture out of him as the scapegoat. His son did on Instagram, showing you that he's basically leading his followers off a cliff, that's what happens to the scapegoat. What is interesting about this as well was the way it was worded. So it says Trump's order calls to revoke visas of foreign students who protest against Israel, and then they tie it in with U.S. president vows to expel pro-jihadists protesters. Like what? How can you combine those two?
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? There's such a reach, isn't it?
But that's what they do. I mean, I've been on Palestinian marches for years, going back into the early 2000s, and I make no bones about my stance on Sharia law, mass immigration, Islamification of towns and cities. Do you know what I mean? And I get called all sorts of names for it. So the idea that anyone that protests against Israel is suddenly supporting jihadists is extraordinary to me. And also, actually, Rich, to be fair, the US government, the UK government, and to be fair, most NATO governments completely supported what would be considered jihadist in Al Qaeda in overthrowing Assad in Syria. So you can't protest against Israel because that makes you pro-jihadist, but you can give billions to jihadist groups. That's fine. It's extraordinary, Rich. It really is. But
yeah,
the world
it
we
is
live in,
really
mate.
Doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't
Backwards world, isn't it?
Isn't it
backwards
just?
Well, my next one is Meloni. Meloni. Under investigation for release of wanted Libyan warlord. It's like that's what you do on your weekends. This was really interesting because actually it didn't have much to do with the wanted warlord. this seems to me to be something to undermine the ICC, and obviously who are the ICC after at the moment? So Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is facing a probe into her government's decision to repatriate a Libyan general wanted by the International Crimes Court, so the ICC, for crimes against humanity and war crimes. Now, she even says in this that she will not be blackmailed. I would say that that's an inversion of what's happened here. The ICC is obviously I believe they have an arrest warrant out for Netanyahu. I'm right with that, aren't I?
You are, yeah, and Gallant as well.
Yeah,
There's two of them, yeah.
Right, okay, yeah, and Gallant, yes. So she's undermining them. So the ICC said Italy, as a signatory to the Rome Statute, was under an obligation to hand al-Masri, he's the guy, the warlord, over for prosecution. But Italy released al-Masri with prior notice or consultation with the court. ICC said ICC officials did not immediately respond to a query from Courthouse News on Tuesday. So she's undermining the ICC on purpose and arrest warrants. Like, it doesn't mean anything. But also what's really interesting is they were undermining the Rome Statute. Now, Rome is the West to these guys. So Rome is under attack. So they believe that they are bringing down Rome. So when you had Elon Musk doing his Roman salute the other week, he was mocking Rome. So when you have all of these buildings in Capitoline Hill, obviously the City of London, they're all Roman buildings. They are attacking what they believe in this cult believe is Rome. So they're attacking everything that stands from the old Roman Empire, which never went away, as we know. So it's really interesting to see that these guys are actually taking on these established sort of courts and statutes, because they're trying to take down what they deem as Rome, which would be the West, which would be obviously the US and the UK and Europe. And they're doing it from within.
I looked at this Meloni story, Rich, and I thought there was more to it as well. And it's interesting that you speak about the fact that it's undermining the ICC, which is obviously what the United States and Israel want to do, because they want to undermine it to a point that basically he has no jurisdiction to arrest Netanyahu and Gallant. Now, it's a weird one because there's lots of games of chess going on. And I thought that's one way of looking at it. Yeah, it could be undermining the ICC for sure, especially with Netanyahu being Donald Trump's first foreign leader visit to Washington. You'd be very surprised that it's Netanyahu, won't you, ladies and gentlemen? I'm sure he's going to Washington to give Trump his orders. And so obviously that's an interesting thing, because you've got her being investigated for embezzlement and for releasing this so-called warlord, because it undermines the ICC, when at the same time Trump's going to welcome Netanyahu to the White House, and there will be absolute crickets in terms of anything coming from the ICC about that, I'm absolutely sure. But another thing that throws a bit of a kind of question into that is, I wonder if Meloni is being somewhat punished or made an example of because she put an arms embargo on Israel at the end of last year. She was one of very few nations, certainly Western nations, that actually did that. The United Kingdom kind of poked at it and under a lot of pressure. Oh yeah, they're putting an arms embargo, and actually if you actually look at the details of that, it's absolute nonsense. It was literally the equivalent of going, yeah, don't send them those bullets, send them those ones instead. I wonder if there's a bit of an example being made of Meloni on that front, in terms of just get back in your box, mate. You don't say no to Israel.
Well, exactly, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there. So there's a reason why she said she will not be blackmailed. I think you will, and I think you have to basically. If you've had your arm twisted at the very least, so they don't say these things for no reason.
No, exactly that. Okay, so final story, Rich, but it's kind of quite a well, it's a couple of stories in one really, and it's quite a big one. So I'm sure I'll sort of we'll throw back and forth on this one a little bit. I'm sure you've seen the RFK confirmation hearing in the United States. So obviously, RFK Jr. has been picked by Trump, but he then needs to get confirmed to the position. Now, I find that quite strange in terms of how they're I mean, this isn't a dig at America, because the British political system is bonkers as well. It's just political systems in general. So Trump gets elected. He gets the majority of the vote. So he gets in. He gets to pick his administration, his cabinet. Yet the other party get to basically choose it or confirm it or say no to it. So it's almost like the other team gets to pick my starting 11 if I'm a football manager. It's bizarre to me. I don't understand how that works. Surely Trump, as the elected, obviously we're not Trump fans, but Trump as the elected prime minister gets to go, okay, well, you've elected me to represent you for 4 years. Here's my lineup. Like, here's my team to do it. The fact that the other team gets to pick whether you can have someone in your team or not, take David Beckham out. It's extraordinary.
Perhaps, exactly. Well, just a little point there is what a perfect excuse for not allowing RFK in.
Well, exactly, because I don't think he's going to get confirmed. I don't think he was ever intended to get confirmed, but you get to blame the other party for the fact that he didn't get confirmed, even though you would have got an enormous amount of votes. Donald Trump would have got an enormous amount of votes from RFK supporters. But it's an interesting one as well. So he was being grilled by Bernie Sanders. He was being grilled by Elizabeth Warren, the Native American. Who they're basically just shilling for Big Pharma massively. And even, she even said in an interview afterwards that, he could bankrupt vaccine manufacturers if he basically didn't allow them essentially to be able to do what they do without repercussions, really. Because obviously in America, vaccine providers are massively protected in terms of being sued by people they maim and kill. Another interesting part of it was Callie Means, who we've spoke to quite a few times on this channel. He featured in our Body of Evidence documentary. We actually spoke about Callie Means yesterday. He was there and he was filming before this hearing started. Now he's in the press pool, and he filmed a bunch of mainstream reporters with their laptops open. This is before it started, before RFK's even come out to be grilled by the Native American Elizabeth Warren, and they've already written the headlines. They've already written the fact that he was grilled for being anti-vaccine and for his mutilation of animals, because I know he's a keen hunter and all this kind of stuff. The headlines are already there, and Callie Means has got it on film. So this just shows what an absolute sham the whole thing is, Rich.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not a fan of much of what RFK has been doing in terms of the connections to these bad guys, but I mean, he did some great work before that. They seemed to have his arm twisted at some point when Shmuley got around him. But that is astonishing to zoom in, guys. You go and look at the video. If we put it on here, maybe. But they zoom in, and this lady's already written the headline and the byline, and it's like, it's just topsy turvy world.
It's the mainstream media for you, Rich. That's exactly what it is. And they're in cahoots with the political parasite class. I can't stand any of it. Now, what I found very strange was then RFK then goes on to say how he's not anti-vaccine, he's actually pro-vaccine. He commends warp speed as being a success. This is the warp speed that's killed and maimed thousands upon thousands in the United States. Now, people watching this that are fans of RFK and fans of Trump, I'm sure will say this is part of this chess game, that actually he's just saying that to get confirmed, and then once he's confirmed, he can go against stuff. Now, of course, yeah, that's not a stretch to think that. To be fair, I can understand that, why you would think that, and that may well be the case to a certain extent. I personally don't think he will get confirmed. Now this story, Rich, right? This won't seem anything like connected to people around the world, but to me, it's connected in the sense of just what a sham politics is. Now, that used to be pretty commonly accepted within our realm of either alternative media or alternative thinkers, was politics is a sham, two cheeks are the same backside. They all work for the 1%, they don't work for us, right? That was common knowledge. That's changed, isn't it? To be fair, since 2016, when actually people then started getting sucked back into politics again, whether it be in this country through Brexit, whether it be in the United States with the emergence of Trump, apparently fighting the deep state, despite the fact he's up to his neck in it. I've never changed my stance, Richard. I know you haven't either, in the sense that politics is just a sham. And this is a perfect example of it, as if the RFK and the headline being written in advance wasn't example enough. So in the UK, there's a lady called Caroline Harris, or Carolyn Harris. People might recognise her. She's a Labour Party MP. She's got purple hair, wears like big, gaudy, bright colours and stuff like that. So people tend to comment on her appearance a lot. I've seen a lot of people saying she looks like Dame Edna Everage, which she kind of does. But for me, I'm pro-freedom, so I don't give them a rat's ass, to be fair, what she looks like and what colour her hair is. I couldn't care less. It's more about the competence. But she's just announced that she's been made UK trade envoy to New Zealand. So it's a pretty decent cabinet position, to be fair, within the government, where she is there to improve trade and build business connections between the two nations, between the United Kingdom and New Zealand. So I know what you're thinking. What are Carolyn's qualifications to do that? You would assume she's got a history of business dealings, whether it be either with other nations or with New Zealand. Maybe she started a few businesses of her own from before she became a politician, so therefore she knows about trade. She knows about what kind of infrastructure and partnerships you would need, what kind of logistics you would need, what maybe the red tape is between certain nations of getting trade through and tariffs and stuff like that. Of course she'd need that knowledge. Maybe she does. So she's got a degree in social history, so that will come in handy. After she left university, she became a barmaid, which is absolutely fine. I have no problem with a barmaid, sound, but I'm not sure it qualifies her for the job. She then became a dinner lady, and now
that could work.
That could work. I can see how logistics between dishing up slop to kids and being a trade envoy to New Zealand. The next job then is MP and trade envoy to New Zealand. Is there no people with any business acumen anywhere in the soon-to-be 72.4 million people in the United Kingdom that would be better suited to that role, Rich?
It's almost like there's a back door into these job roles, isn't it? That you don't have to have any qualifications for, because you're not actually calling any of the shots. So they just need poster face, poster child, poster person to just pretend that they're actually doing the job when they're not. It's almost as if that is likely the case, is probably the case. She's gone from a dinner lady to, nothing wrong with dinner lady, my mum's a dinner lady, but she's definitely not the envoy to New Zealand unless she's moonlighting at the moment. It's astounding, isn't it? Who was the lady recently, Carol from Accounts, who had no qualifications for it?
Our current Chancellor of the Exchequer basically lied on her LinkedIn about what she'd done previously. How you keep your role after that is beyond me, but then this is politics. But I looked at it, Rich, and I thought, okay, so what this is, I don't care that she's got purple hair and wears big, gaudy, bright colours and she's got very short, spiky hair. That I couldn't care less about that. A lot of people pick on her for her appearance. If you want to be pro-freedom, you can't be picking on someone for their appearance, in my view. I think she should be able to dress and look how the hell she wants. But that, in terms of progressive, would be quite good for Labour, because Labour are very woke. They're very, we promote basically every single minority, that we are a very minority first party. So therefore, to promote someone with that image to a cabinet position would be seen as virtuous, as virtue signalling for the Labour Party. To hell whether they're any good at the job or not. And the other aspect I looked at was the fact that she's former head of Welsh Labour. So it's almost like if the Labour Party want to continue to get elected in the UK, they kind of need the support of Scottish Labour, and they kind of need the support of Welsh Labour as well. So giving someone, whether they be a barmaid or a dinner lady, giving them a cabinet position would be seen as being inclusive to Welsh Labour, and I'm sure they'll probably find a cabinet position for Scottish Labour MPs as well. I'm sure there's a reason behind it, but what that reason isn't, Rich, is for the benefit of trade between the United Kingdom and New Zealand, and therefore the benefit of British businesses and the British public in general.
Yeah, as you've pointed out there, I think really that politics is perception. That's all it is. It's just perception. So the whole political sphere is about how things are perceived to the general public, and that's what they've ticked a few boxes there, I suppose. That's
it, exactly it. There's so much box ticking within politics that it's extraordinary to me. Just I'm old school. Give the job to the most competent person. Who's the best person for the job? Now, if we ended up with a cabinet of say 50 people in the cabinet and all 50 of them were women, I personally couldn't give a toss. If they're the best people for the job, give them the job. And equally, if it turns out that it's 50 men, that's fine. It's the best people for the job. That's the best thing for the country. But we're supposed to focus on, what color skin, what color hair. Has she got purple hair and all this kind of nonsense? And it's always to the detriment of the country. It's ridiculous, Rich. I find it quite frustrating, and I'm getting annoyed. But there you go.
Yeah, one of the things I said about diversity, the jobs, is diversity. So the diversity of the roles we have people that just really not good at the job at all, people that are really rubbish, and some people that are competent, and that's our diversity of job roles. It's bizarre. It's so bizarre.
It is. That's why politics for me, mate, is not the answer at all. Today's show was brought to you in association with Ape Nutrition, bringing British organic specialist food products onto the supplement market. Head over to apenutrition.co.uk and use the code ICONICMedia for 10% off the range. Great to see you, Rich. Take care of yourself, mate.
Thank you, mate. Nice to see you.
And you and everyone at home. We'll see you tomorrow.